Good evening, Coalinga. Today I'm here with Kevin Donaldson, and for those of you who don't know, Kevin will be running for the District 4 council seat. That seat is currently held by Tanya Stoltz, who has decided not to run for re-election. Right now we have three candidates in that district, and today we'll be talking with Kevin. I believe we'll have Ruth on Monday, and we'll have Manny sometime after that as well. Also, I want to remind everyone not to forget about the 15th is Candidates Night. We all tune into that. Let's learn more about Kevin. Kevin, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been living in Coalinga since 1971, so I'm a lifelong resident. So basically, I should have the best part of Coalinga at hand. I worked in this town for the Department of Corrections in various spots.
Pleasant Valley?
Actually at Soledad.
Okay.
Went there for 2 years, then transferred to Avenel for a year and a half, to Pleasant Valley, then back to Avenel for the rest of my career.
All right.
Worked in various spots like correctional officer, which helped me deal with hard to get along personalities. After that, I went to correctional counselor, which then I served on a lot of committees. So I know basically how at least statewide committees work for classifying the inmates, making sure that they have the appropriate program for them, and also public safety. Then last 3 years of my career, since I am retired at the present time, I was a correctional counselor 2 specialist involved with inmate appeals. At that time, I was processing those appeals to various other departments, making sure that they answer those departments according to Department of Regulations and rules, and also what the warden ordered.
All right. How long were you there for?
I was there for 27 years.
27 years. Wow. So that makes you about 35 years old then, huh?
Yeah, sure.
So, what makes you want to be on council? Like, how did you decide that you wanted to run for council, and what do you think you would bring to the council if you were to get on and elected by the people?
Well, as everybody knows, that there was a lot of political bickering on the council for the past few years.
What?
I'm kind of tired of it. Kind of wondering why the safety and security has been, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of downplayed for the city of Coalinga, with getting rid of the animal control officer, some positions of the code enforcement officers for safety of Coalinga, because I know that there's safety issues now with people not following some of the codes.
Right.
I'm not saying that the shelter has any problems. That was one of the good moves, but we also need to give the police department back the duties of the animal control officer. So maybe we can have an animal control officer on each watch, so then we won't have so many loose animals running around, possibly injuring the citizens of Coalinga.
All right. Well, that's an interesting topic, and we're going to circle back around to that in a little bit. What do you think are the biggest issues in Coalinga right now, and what are going to be some of your priorities to address those issues, or what are your plans for when you get on council?
Well, I already discussed the animal control issue. Basically, I would talk to the chief of police, see what he needs done, suggest, training an officer to capture those loose animals with maybe some extra pay incentive if we can find it someplace in the budget. Second issue would be to take away the responsibility of the council to elect a mayor. I think that should be done by the citizens of Coalinga, so that way there's no wrongdoings,
Right.
any backyard dealings. It should be done by the citizens for every 2 years. So then the mayor would stay in that position for every 2 years when the city council gets elected.
Right.
And then the third issue would be to rescind the health benefits for all city council members, make sure that people are not running for this office just for the benefits. Because as small of a budget that we have, everybody should run for the city council or any other elected position because they want to try to better city of
Right.
Coalinga.
And it's an interesting point because even cities like Hanford doesn't offer health benefits to their city councilmen. Let's go back to what you said about electing the mayor. Currently, the council appoints the mayor, and in order for us to have the people of the city elect the mayor, we would have to put it on the ballot first, and then we'd have to redo districts. So we'd have to go from 5 districts down to 4 districts. Obviously, that's going to cost some money. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of $90,000 probably. That's going to be over a couple of years. Would that be something you would be willing to invest the city's money into?
That would be an alternative. The one thing that I would suggest would be the 2 or 3 council members that are not on the election cycle at that time.
Right.
If they want to run for the mayor, then have them say, okay, yeah, I want to be placed on that for the mayor, where they're also the mayor and also representing that district. So that way it saves the city, at least right now, money until if this council decides to just do a freelance mayor position, until they get enough money to actually do that. Because I don't want to put the city into a financial.
Right. Yeah, it's something to think about. I myself support having the people elect the mayor. So going on from there, why don't you tell us, I talked with Andrea about it briefly yesterday about the BLM movement, the defunding the police movement as well. There's a lot of talk about defunding police and then using that money to reinvest into some social programs for various cities around the country. What are your thoughts on BLM movement, one, and what are your thoughts on defunding the police?
You know, there is no right or wrong answer about the BLM movement. It is what it is. If, in my opinion, if the BLM movement had any righteous sayings, they would be in Chicago just about every weekend trying to stop the shootings that's going on there and trying to uplift the biggest ghettos that there are in the United States. My opinion on it, everybody should judge people by the content of the character, not by the skin of their color.
Right. Okay, and defunding the police?
With defunding the police, with having a law enforcement background, I would never, ever want to defund the police. The one thing about the police is they have to have annual training for PC 832. In the Department of Corrections, they also gave us other classes that we were supposed to be trained on, which covered a multitude of stuff just depending on what the political stance was in all the years that I served. So if police officers need training in trying to de-escalate and so forth, that's what I would recommend and not defund the police.
Better training is something
Better
you
training.
want to invest in.
Yep.
Okay. Why don't we talk about cannabis? Cannabis is a big issue in Coalinga. There's some more companies coming into town that are cannabis related. What are your thoughts on cannabis? What are your thoughts on more cannabis businesses? Why don't you tell us a little bit? Why don't we touch on that a little bit?
Well, with cannabis, right now it's actually illegal by federal law. But federal authorities are not taking any incentive on trying to bust with Colorado and other states doing cannabis businesses. So My thought is, if it brings income into the city, why not? If they're not gonna enforce the laws, and California says it's legal, they're not gonna enforce whatever the federal says. Whatever businesses that we can bring in will be better income for the city, better jobs for the citizens, and
Yeah,
it's just, it brings in more money.
yeah,
It's
more
most
revenue for the
important.
city is definitely a priority. What do you feel about additional cannabis businesses coming into the city? Do you think the city should pursue more cannabis businesses? Because since right now, really, it's the cannabis businesses who want to come into Coalinga where a lot of other businesses don't. Should we pursue more businesses in the cannabis industry? Should we just keep it where it's at? Should we, if a cannabis business goes out of business, should we not try and bring in another business, cannabis-related business to come in? How do you feel about additional cannabis companies coming to Coalinga?
Well, if the additional businesses want to come in and if they want to bring in more jobs, I would say that I'm all for it, just to bring in the revenue for the city.
All right. And let's talk about this tax structure for cannabis. Right now, we tax the dispensary at 10%. We tax some of the indoor and outdoor grow at $7 per square foot. That puts us a little bit on the higher side and around the valley and for the whole state, really. Do you believe we should keep our taxes where they are, or should we try and lower the taxes to bring in more businesses and more jobs with cannabis-related businesses? Or should we keep them where they're at, because we know what our revenue is going to be, and not try and, if we lower taxes, we'd be trying to do it as an incentive for other companies to come here. So do you think we should do that, or do you think we should keep the taxes where they're at right now?
Well, without having more information on it, depends on where the lower taxes are. If the lower taxes are way down in Southern California, I would say no. If the lower taxes are, let's say, in Hanford, then I would say, well, in order to bring more of those businesses here in Coalinga, yeah, I'd say that maybe we should look at lowering the taxes.
Okay. Let's talk about the budget. For many years, the budget has been an issue in Coalinga. At one point, we're somewhere around the neighborhood of $4 million in debt. How do you feel about a balanced budget? Is that going to be a priority for you? And would you ever vote for a budget that was not balanced?
The one thing that I can tell you by running a rental business, I've owned a rental business since 1992. Been running it with my wife. I've always checked with her to see what kind of budgetary things that we can do to improve those rentals. We've always tried to run a balanced budget. There's occasionally that we say, okay, we've got more rent or less rent coming in than what we're having to spend on this house. It happens. So my whole thing is let's run a balanced budget as much as we can. There's going to be occasions that we can't, but the one thing that the only true thing that I would run not a balanced budget is to keep our first responders. And that's including the animal control officer and also code enforcement that pertains to safety and security of Coalinga.
Okay. So let's go on to, let's talk about another big issue in Coalinga, and that's gang violence. We've seen a surge in shootings over the last few months. The state's not helping us at all with their laws that they're coming out with. Zero bail has just made things absolutely worse. What do you have a plan to try and help combat gang violence, or how would you want to address something like that?
Well, the one thing is the council can't do anything unless the police chief requests things that the council needs to approve. I'm hoping that the police chief or the police department is communicating with Avenel and Huron to where they are communicating, giving information on who's gang members, who's not, where they're moving, what kind of things that they might be doing, who's on parole, who's on probation, so then they can do parole and probation checks on them anytime they see them on the streets. If they aren't communicating with each other, then I would definitely highly suggest that they do that. And maybe have some type of strike team where if they need backup and there's not enough, let's say in Coalinga or Avenel, that they want backup, and we can send an officer or two over there to back them up.
Okay. All right, and we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. Let's talk about animal control and code enforcement again. You mentioned one of your plans. You were thinking, well, why don't you tell us what one of your plans is for animal control and code enforcement?
Well, like I said, with animal control, it would be up to union negotiations, because I know that there's a lot of unions with the city, just like with the state. Hopefully that they would agree to have an extra pay incentive, if we can find it someplace in the budget, to have a animal control officer basically on each watch, or hopefully just during the day, so then they can take care of any loose animals. Then with the code enforcement officer, basically that would be also another contract negotiations, but we do have a lot of city employees that go all over the city, and I know that they see a lot of code violations, where that they can let the city manager know what they've seen, maybe take a picture of it, and also keep the anonymous reporting that the city has off their website.
Okay, so you'd like to see animal control maybe done by some police officers as a for the time being, or would you actually want to hire an animal control officer?
Actually, just to save money for retirement and so forth, benefits. If we offer the officer so much more money a month if they get trained and also do the duties of the animal control officer, hopefully that would be incentive enough for them to do.
Okay. And let's say like, okay, so that's your first thing, is you want to see it done within the police department, I guess. And then secondary would be to hire an animal control officer.
If there couldn't be negotiations where they couldn't, then we would have to hire at least an animal control officer, because I think the staff at the shelter is doing good. But with the influx, we'd also have to expand the shelter.
Right. Right, because they do get full a lot.
Yep.
So if it came down to it, like for instance, this year in the budget, we started with $500,000 in debt. We were able, council and staff were able to get that down to about a $20,000 surplus. We'll see how that ends at the end of the year after all this COVID stuff. But let's say we had a $20,000 surplus. Would you still want to hire an animal control officer, even if that meant putting us in debt by about $70,000, $80,000?
Like I said, we'd have to see how the negotiations go with the police department. Because if I read correctly, by one of the code, police department's supposed to be in charge of it anyways.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want to tell us before we get off here?
The only thing is that running for this position, I know that people are concerned on who to vote for and so forth. One thing that I want to make clear is that I know who my boss is, and that's the citizens of Coalinga, along with District 4 and the whole town. So if there's any concerns and so forth, I'm approachable. You can come to me if I'm elected, and I will try to get any resolution I can to whatever problem that you bring to my attention.
Very good. Kevin, I want to thank you for coming here and letting people know. As you know, ballots have already went out. I want to make sure everyone gets to hear from the candidates before they fill out their ballot. Also, don't forget October 15th, Candidates Night. Very important that everyone watch. I believe it's at 6 p.m. On a side note, there's rumors going around that I'm endorsing people. I have not endorsed anybody. If you hear it, it's a lie. Okay, see y'all, Coalinga. Thanks for tuning in.